Hey there, welcome back to the Well Balanced Mind, and I'm Shannon Rollins, your host, clinical hypnotherapist, and coach located in Orlando. And as you know, if you've been to this show, every single week I come to you with tips and tricks on how to live a happier, healthier life inside and out with methodology, psychology, and bringing expert guests on as well. And today I'm really excited because a special guest is going to be talking about a topic that we all know very well, and it's Jaclyn Digregorio. And she is a coach, also a motivational speaker, professional speaker, and she was my business coach for a very long time as I was starting my business. And today we're going to be talking about money, the topic of money, which has been a huge stressor, the number one stressor for many, many people. So Jaclyn, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so happy just to have you and see you again and be able to chat with you. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
For sure. And everyone, the reason why I wanted to bring Jaclyn in, especially to talk about money, is because money mindset and money blocks and just money issues in general. When I first came to Jaclyn for coaching, I'm sure you can remember this, I had a lot of fear surrounding money. I had a lot of fear surrounding financial abundance, financial success, and a lot of clients that I see come in, especially those who are wanting to start their own business or do their own thing, they have the same thing. And so Jaclyn helped me a ton with being able to really overcome those obstacles. Jaclyn, is that something that you hear a lot from people? I'm assuming a lot of your clients probably have those same issues.
Yeah, I would say most people, I think, but especially the
Yeah,
people I tend to attract, they desire more money, right? Like that's
yeah.
something that would be nice for everyone to have, and we can have it all, and we all can continue to increase our wealth. And so, in order to have more money, you have to first remove the blocks that are holding you back and keeping you stuck where you are. So, it's something that I work with pretty much all my clients on.
Yeah, and this idea of lack that we have, especially when you say we desire more money, I think one of the issues that I was initially running into when it came to money was guilt that I wanted more money. You know, that guilt that's holding me
Hmm.
back. What would you say? I mean, when you work with people, is it something where you're hearing a lot of different types of blocks surrounding money, or what, just an overview, what you commonly hear people say, what's some things they're going through?
Yeah, I think it's common themes and it's mostly based on society and
Hmm.
some of the things that maybe we heard from parents or teachers, and they were really well meaning, but they didn't serve us, right? And so
Yeah.
guilt around wanting a lot of money is common because there's a common phrase in the English language, and I know at least in the US that's tossed around a lot, that says rich people are greedy, right? And so as a young child, you don't want to be rich because you don't want to be greedy. You want to be a good person. You want to be a kind person. You want to be a generous person. So that's a really common one. Other ones include like a fear that, which is kind of related, but a fear that if you have more money, then someone else has less, and that anyone who made it to this level of wealth has inherently taken away from someone who has less, which isn't ultimately true. There's not a pie in the sky of money. There's more money being printed every day. 25% of the US dollar today in 2021 has been printed in the past year, which is insane. So
What?
there's definitely enough.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
inflation, it's very concerning actually, but I'm not talking about finance
Wow.
because I'm not an expert on the market, but I can tell you
Yeah.
that there's lots of money for all of us to be successful. And so when we hear these phrases so often as kids, we, as you know, Shannon, we take these and we put them in our subconscious minds, right? So between
Yeah.
birth and 8 years
Hmm.
old, we're that walking subconscious. And so we hear our parents say things, we hear our teachers say things, and we don't even understand that they've just become wired into our brains. So of course, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
It's just a product of your environment, and it's okay. It's not anyone's fault. Don't blame your parent. Don't blame anyone. Uh, it's time for you to now rewire your brain, change those beliefs so that you can
Yeah.
create the financial abundance you desire.
Yeah. I love how you said don't blame yourself, because I swear every time this conversation comes up, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm wrecking my kids. I'm teaching them bad things." And it's really, I mean, what you, okay, wait. Jaclyn initially taught me, it's all about the language, right? When I first started with Jaclyn, I was doing coaching before I was doing hypnotherapy, and it is all about the language that we use. And I just remember growing up, and money doesn't grow on trees. That was the big one that I heard and then also this idea of lack, that it's bad to go into debt, and that you have to have an extreme amount of savings to feel safe. And I know specifically for me, that put me in a state of anxiousness and fear all the time. If I wasn't meeting whatever the standard of whoever gave for this to happen. And so, I mean, can you share a little bit about kind of, I don't really want to say your process because everyone's process is different, but just some tips or some things that you've done. I know that you've had some great financial success, especially as an entrepreneur, business owner, author, all these things. And I just want to hear your mindset and just how you thrive positively to share with other people.
Yeah. So the first thing I would suggest is something you mentioned, which is language. That's where I always recommend people start. And the reason for that is because when we try to change our thoughts, sometimes it feels really overwhelming because we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day. And so because of that, it's almost impossible for someone who is new to mindset work trying to change all of these thoughts around money. And then what happens is they shut down and they say, well, that's really hard, so I'm just gonna not even try. And so I always recommend that people start with their language because we hear the words we say out loud. We read the words we type on our phones in a text message or in a social media post. So there are a few words surrounding money that I recommend that you remove from your vocabulary. So the first one is expensive. So instead of saying expensive, I have two reframes. And before I get into the reframes, I'll explain why it's not serving you to say it's expensive. So something that you might think is expensive. Let's just say you think that staying in a hotel that costs $1,000 a night is expensive. Then you ask yourself, does Bill Gates think that's expensive? Does Jeff Bezos think that's expensive? Probably not. So the word expensive is a relative term, meaning it's relative to your amount of wealth. So if you want to create more wealth, don't keep speaking into existence the story that you're broke, right? And so removing that word's really serving you. So some swaps. I love swaps because when people first think about this concept of changing your language, they shut down because they say, Jaclyn, I don't want to live like my head's in the clouds and I don't want to just pretend I can afford things I can't. And I'm like, wait a second. That's not what we're talking about here. Yeah. It's a reframe, and a reframe acknowledges where you are and it paints it in a different light. So two choices for expensive. The first is for something that you would consider expensive that you desire. So I was just on a little abundance walk, and I went in this really high-end store. And there were all of these like really fancy clothes, very high-end, notice I'm not saying expensive, with a large price tag. And instead of saying, oh man, I love that dress, but it's $500, that's pretty expensive for a dress, right? I said to myself, ooh, I love this dress. It's such a luxury item. It's such high quality. It's so premium. So you can describe this thing you desire with words like luxury, premium, high quality to describe this level of just abundance that is in this item. So that's the first thing. So whenever I think about, oh, I really want a massage, but let's say it's not in my budget this month, I might say something like, I really want a massage. It's such a luxurious thing and I can't wait to get one soon, right? Instead of I can't have that, or so that's one swap. The other swap for expensive is if something is expensive and you don't even want it, right? Because that's something with money mindset that I think is important. Having wealth and building wealth isn't about spending all of your money just because you can. It's about really respecting your money, having a good relationship with it the same way you would with a person. So there's lots of things that cost a significant amount of money that I could buy, but I don't because I don't desire them. So I'm trying to think of an example of something that like some people really value, but I never would. I always think of a yacht. People always talk about when I have millions of dollars, I'm going to buy a yacht. I wouldn't want to live on a boat. I get boat sick. We do have a boat, a small boat, just to go like, in the ocean, out to lunch or something like that. But I would never desire a yacht personally. Now, someone else, that could be their biggest dream. So if I was talking about a yacht, instead of saying, oh, yachts are so expensive, I would say yachts, in my opinion, are overpriced. I just wouldn't spend the $50 million on a yacht. I'd rather take my $50 million and spend it on investment properties or something, right?
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
like you're just letting the person you're talking to or yourself know that it's not something that you would spend on. It's not something you desire. So I like to use overpriced as a term. Cheap. So it's the opposite of expensive. So it's relative. So if you think
Yeah.
something that is traditionally expensive is cheap. So for example, I give the example of sunscreen. So if you live like anywhere, if you're listening from Florida, you probably know this, but if you live anywhere where it's like there's a peak of beachgoers or people who need sunscreen, whether it's all year or a certain time of the year, if you go to a store right near the beach, the sunscreen costs significantly more money than somewhere that might be miles away. So for
That's
me, I
true.
live,
I didn't realize
it's
that
something
until
I've
now.
been studying because
Yeah.
it's really just interesting in terms of finance. Anyways, where I live is outside Philadelphia, and most people in my area go to the Jersey Shore, so the New Jersey beaches in summer. And if I buy sunscreen at the grocery store at home, it's like $5 for a spray can. But if I buy it when I get to the beach, it's like $25 for the same spray can. And so one day last summer, I was out of sunscreen. I'm like, oh no, I didn't plan. I was in a rush. I was busy. I need sunscreen, so I'm just going to buy it on the boardwalk. It's like $25. My fiance is like, wow, this is expensive sunscreen. And I said, $25? That's so cheap. That's nothing. You know how many $25 we have in our bank account? And he's like looking at me like, Jacqueline, sunscreen normally costs like $5. But I'm like, you see, it's the concept behind it that if I thought $25 was cheap, then it's relative, right? So I use the
Yeah.
same principle as not using expensive to often say like cheap or it's a good deal. It's super affordable, right? And so just kind of speaking into existence the reality you want. So those are a few language swaps that I would start with. And
Okay.
I think that's a good place to start because I don't want to overwhelm anyone.
I think that is awesome. And you mentioned something just a couple minutes ago where you're like, I have tons of $25 in my account. And the way that you said that and the way you think about it, right? If we're looking at $5, how many $5 bills do you have in your bank account? That sounds pretty abundant to me. And when you look at the big picture of it, right? But it is relative. If I have millions of dollars in the bank and I go and buy, I don't know, like a $500,000 house, then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nothing. This is nothing. But if someone is, right? So if you're looking at it, it's just so relative. And so expensive, cut out expensive is what you're saying. Just stop using that word altogether and replace it with like high quality, luxury. Okay. I'm going to start doing that too. That's going to help a lot.
It's fun and it makes a
Yeah.
difference. You're going to hear, so when you first change your language, and Shannon, you know this from other language swaps, but you're going to hear yourself say it. It's like word vomit. You're like, whoop. And then you
Yeah.
hear it come out and you're like, take it back. So it's kind of funny because you'll be in conversation with someone, and depending who the person is, if they know you're kind of on this journey or if they're interested in personal development, you may tell them, hey, I've been trying not to use the word expensive, so I'm going to reword that. But if it's a random person or maybe you're at a meeting for work, you might just quickly reword your sentence. They don't even notice. I was so self-conscious about that when I first started working on my language because I thought that the people around me would pick up on me constantly changing what I was saying, and then I would have to explain myself, and I didn't feel like wasting my breath on it.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
realized that nobody cares and nobody noticed and nobody's analyzing everything you're saying.
And that's so true. We always think, especially when we're making a change in our language, it sounds so weird the way that because I do something that's a little more non-covert than you. I'm like, cancel that, and then I say whatever it is, but I know that people know that I'm saying cancel that. So even just stopping the thought and just recorrecting the thought, because you're right, it's a habit. We've been saying this, oh my gosh, like since we were little, and we picked it up from our parents and the mindsets of our society and in school and things we've heard from other people. And I just think that language, like you said, it's so important that we change that. And I really like that technique to start with so if you are struggling with with something money related or being in debt or being afraid you can't pay something off, just starting with the language seems like a perfect way to go to start with.
Yeah. And you can add affirmations to that too. So like,
okay.
just like speaking the way that you desire your reality to change. So for example, if you're in debt and you desire to pay off your debt, instead of when you get your credit card bill or your student loan being like, ugh, I have so much debt, I feel so drained by it, and I'm never going to get out of debt, you can say something like, I acknowledge that I am in some debt right now, and I am in the process of paying it off, and I know that very soon I will be debt free, and I'm so excited for that day. So it's a bridge between where you are now and where you're going. You can also go with the whole, like, I'm going to speak as if I already have the thing I want. And that works too sometimes. It's all about the person. And so what I want you to understand here is it's about the way your body feels when you say the thing, because your body can't lie, your mind can. So if you say this affirmation of like, I'm debt free, right? Because some people are writing that in their journal every day, but they feel icky every time they say it out loud. It's not really helping them. Although repetition is the brain's language, so eventually maybe it'll click for them. But I like to start with a bridge affirmation or a bridge statement or phrase where it kind of acknowledges where I am and where I'm going. And then when I feel comfortable with that, I start to step more and more into the reality of like, I'm going to be debt free so soon. I am debt free. So working on just kind of what you're saying around your financial circumstances in general is helpful.
Yeah, in the process of is what comes to my mind. Like, hey, I'm not out of debt yet, but I'm in the process of being debt free. Because I was one of those people, Jacqueline, I would write down, I make this amount in my business, and my body, when I would write that, I would get anxious. Because that was my subconscious mind being like, you don't make that much in your business yet. What are you saying? So I had to switch it, and that's all. I just added that word. I'm in the process of making, and that made it so much better for me because it just kept reminding me again and again and again, this is going to happen for you. It's inevitable. It's going to happen, but let go of the timing, and that's what I had to agree with. Yeah,
I love that. And another thing you can do too is like stepping stones, right? And so you don't have to be debt free overnight, right? Let's say you have $20,000 in debt. You might write down like, I paid off $10,000 of my debt. And just focus on that little chunk rather than focusing on the whole thing. And this is actually proven if you research like people paying off debt and the way that our brains work. Traditionally, it was taught that in order to pay off your debt fastest, you should pay off like the highest interest loan or credit card first, and then go in order down to your lowest interest. And that is based on if you do the analysis of the interest rate that you're paying and the amount of money that's on that interest rate over time, mathematically, it would tell you that a human being would pay less debt because they'd pay off that high interest. But what they found when they actually studied people trying to implement this is that when there isn't momentum, it's difficult for us to commit to our goals and make progress because we feel like we're so far off and then we just give up. I'm never going to get out of debt. So something that a lot of people teach is called the Snowball Method, where you'll actually pay off the debt on the lowest amount. So you don't even look at the interest rate, but let's say you have a student loan for $2,000 and you have a credit card that you have $5,000 on. You'd actually pay off the student loan first because once you pay that off, you feel so good. You feel so proud of yourself. And then you can take that momentum into paying off that credit card. So you could do the same thing even if you have like a big loan. Like let's say you have a lump sum loan or something. Just say, okay, I'm going to pay off $5,000 and work towards that goal, celebrate that goal. Or in your business, I'm going to, even though I desire to be making $50,000 a month, let's start with 10 and let's celebrate the heck out of that 10 and then go to 15 and then go to 20, right? So those are more that can help. So there's a lot here. So
oh my gosh, there's so much good information. I should be taking notes on this right now, but I mean, so it's called the snowball effect, that you start with the lowest amount, and it makes sense because we need those short-term rewards. If you're working on one very high credit card and there's all these other ones hanging out there, that doesn't feel good. I mean, when you think of it that way. And I want to talk a little bit about law of attraction. Because some people are going to be watching who they're like, man, I'm focusing on getting out of debt, but how can I also make more money in the process? And share your thoughts on energy and money, because I've heard you talk about it, and I think it's fascinating the way that you describe the way you look at money.
Yeah. So I think money is energy. It's literally called currency because it's like a current. And there are essentially universal laws at play that are governing how money flows. So there's many of them. But law of attraction is one of the most popular ones. It's a really fun one. So I'll start with that one. So law of attraction is like attracts like. So essentially, you as a human vibrate at a certain frequency. It's kind of like a radio. So when you turn your radio to a certain station, I don't know any of the Florida stations, but here in Philly, the country music station, for example, is 92.5. So when I turn my radio to 92.5, country music plays. Yeah. And the same thing happens with money. So when you turn your frequency to a certain level, a certain amount of money comes back to you. So there is an emotional guidance scale that is essentially like measuring the different frequencies. And you can Google that. It's just Abraham Hicks emotional guidance scale, and it'll come up with like a variety. I think it's maybe like, I don't know, 20 different levels, from the lowest being like desperation, grief, and then the highest is joy. And so as you vibrate at a higher frequency, you attract more money. And so I always recommend people to focus on feeling good first. And this is counterintuitive because people think money is going to make them happy. And so they're actually only seeking the money to feel good. But if you feel good first, then you'll get the money. And here's the thing, if you only wanted money to feel good, you probably won't feel good because there's always another goal. And that's just how we are as humans. It's not your fault. It's just that in life, we are given experiences that create contrast. So any experience you have contrast, and contrast is I like this or I don't like this, right? And so when you have that contrast in life, you then create new desires. You desire more of the things you like and less of the things you dislike. If you've never traveled to Mexico and you go there for the first time and you have the most amazing vacation, you're going to say, I want to come back, right? It's a new desire. You're not going to stop having desires unless you stop living. And so because of that, it's important to anchor in the joy now. And it's really cool because that also brings the money. So that's the number one universal law that I lead with. There are other ones at play as well. Like, for example, the law of cause and effect, also known as the law of karma. Yeah. So essentially, like, you get what you give. And so I'm a big believer in being generous, not because I want the karma, because it makes me feel good. But it's nice to know that when I am giving, I know that it's going to come back to me, maybe in the form of money, maybe in the form of other blessings in my life. And I'm grateful for all of them. So that's another law at play. But there's many universal laws, so I won't get into them all. But if you focus on law of attraction to start, focus on feeling good, focus on living a life that's in alignment for you, trusting your intuition, and knowing that money is going to come when you do things that make you feel good. And I have so many stories of it over and over and over again in my life, in clients' lives, in family members' lives, where it's like, you just can't make it up. It's like they did something that was kind of crazy, kind of out there, but they trusted their joy. It was not the traditional way. It made them really uncomfortable, and they were rewarded so much more than they ever have been before. And we see it with business owners all the time, right? So that's my perspective on money and energy.
Well, and I'm your testimony to that. Because, I mean, we worked together for so long, and I kept hitting my head against a wall again and again and again and again. And I was not listening to my intuition at all because I was in a state of fear. And the second, you were always like, trust yourself, trust yourself, trust yourself more. And right when I decided to finally just go for it and trust myself and move into this new point of my business, that's exactly what happened. And so now, Jacqueline, I mean, I'm sorry, I get excited. I want to get up every time I get excited. I know I can't, but so I get really excited because, I mean, now even when people ask me, what's your business plan, this, that, and the other, and I'm like, I just focus on feeling good. Like the days that I don't feel good, nothing good is going to happen because people can feel your energy. People can. And so thank you for that, Jacqueline. Thanks for teaching that.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I was gonna say, I remember when you first started your practice and you told me like I took out this ad. I had this random inspired action. I took out this ad and like your practice like filled up in like a week from like one ad. And I'm like, you just can't make that kind of thing up. I remember that was a really special story.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to hear, I mean, do you have any, I don't want to say crazy story, but I just like to hear a common example that you hear from your clients or even yourself where you really focused on staying aligned, that law of attraction, which by the way, if you're focused on staying aligned, all of the other laws are affected too, because that give and the law of cause and effect, that if you're giving more and you're feeling good, then it's going to create more of that law of attraction too. But do you have any just personal examples? I'm curious.
Yeah. So like so many in my life of feeling good and then magic coming. But the
Yeah.
one that comes to mind that I'd love to share is actually my dad, which is so fun. So, as someone who practices all these principles, I obviously teach them to my family and I'm really passionate about them. And maybe like, I don't know, 6 months ago, my dad was really miserable at his job and it was just like a really difficult time for him. And, I have been encouraging him to retire for a long time. I'm like, Dad, it's time to
Mhm.
retire. Like, you have worked so hard your whole life. It's time to just slow down, relax, enjoy it. But he's only 63, and so he doesn't have like health insurance through Medicare until he turns 65.
Yeah.
And my mom does work full time, but her job doesn't provide health insurance for anyone other than the employee. And so he's like, Jacqueline, I just can't do that. It's just not possible. And I was like, Dad, like, you just have to trust. And so he's like, okay, which I don't know how I convinced him this. I think he was just like having such a hard time that he trusted me.
Yeah.
And so he retired from his job with literally no plan, like no health insurance, nothing. And he found this part time job opportunity that was going to pay him more than he made at his full time job for only working part time and paid his health insurance. And it just kind of fell into his lap.
Oh
And
my
he loves his
gosh.
job and he's so happy. And it's just like, wow,
Wow.
like, and that was really hard for him to trust being like, father of three girls and having a
Yeah.
lot of obligations and responsibility. They help support my grandmother. Like, it's just like, wow. But he did somehow I convinced him that this stuff works.
Wow.
Maybe from my experiences. Yeah. So I love sharing his story because he's not your traditional like law of attraction, like, been reading the books or anything. And
Yeah.
he just listened and trusted. And it just kind of shows how the universal laws like really play out for
They
people.
do, and they do. I've seen tons and tons and tons of stories too, especially about creating space when sometimes you have to let go of something to welcome in something else new, and that can be really scary for people. To be able to do that. And I've seen that happen a lot too, where you let go or you leave a job and then something just falls in your lap. And that's a part of taking risks and trusting yourself and trusting the universe. And yeah, I mean, I think this is all just so remarkable. So, any lasting tips that you have for anyone listening, if they're either trying to make more money, trying to get out of debt, anything money related?
Yeah. I would say trust that whatever desires are on your heart, they're possible for you. God, the universe is not teasing you. The desire was placed there because you are meant for it. So trust that, lean into that, keep taking action, keep believing in yourself, make the best of wherever you are today. Even if it's difficult, I get it. I've been there. I remember things being really tight, going to the grocery store with $40 trying to get groceries for the week and feeling really stressed around money. I've been there. And I still chose to find joy even in those times, as difficult as it is. And I believe that that's key to creating the success you desire. So it's
Yes.
possible for you, it's coming for you. And the only thing stopping you is you giving up. So please don't do that. Keep going. It's waiting for you as long as you keep going.
Can you guys tell she's a motivational speaker? I'm getting pumped up over here. But yeah, and I agree with you. Just trust yourself. Keep going, keep going. And if you need extra help, Jaclyn does coaching as well for this. Obviously, you've heard my story and my breakthroughs through that. So, Jaclyn, how can people get a hold of you if they either want you to come out and speak or if they want to work with you one on one?
Yeah, my website is a great place. It's just my name, jacquelinedegregorio.com, or you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Jacqueline Degregorio.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, Jacqueline, for coming along. And thank you for coming to the Well Balanced Mind. This actually ties into the last episode we did on taking risks. So go back and watch the episode on taking risks as well. And as always, you can find me on shannonrollins.com. Thanks, and we will see you next time.